Welcome to Liberty, Literacy, and Legacy. I'm Christina Boggess, and in the last episode with my friend Cari, we introduced a word that has become increasingly relevant in American public life. That word is gaslighting. Not the internet insult version of the word, the real one. The psychological and political strategy where observable reality is denied, where language is manipulated, and where citizens are encouraged to doubt their own observations rather than question institutional authority. Gaslighting is not disagreement. Healthy societies argue, healthy citizens debate, but gaslighting is different. Gaslighting replaces evidence with narrative. It frames criticism as extremism, and it slowly teaches people to distrust their own judgment. Tonight, we're going to go deeper. How does institutional gaslighting actually work? Where does it show up in public education and particularly in political communication and in policy language? And why does it matter for liberty? Because a self governing republic depends on something fragile and irreplaceable, a shared commitment to truth, capital T. Cari, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm glad to get back on this topic. So many people think that this is solely about politics, and it's not. It's about principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about truth and trust, especially about trust. If you don't have trust in education, well, if you don't have trust in society, you don't really have a society, right? And the same thing with education.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep.
And especially in schools, as parents, when we send our kids to school, we want to trust that they're getting this, top-notch education, especially when we're told often we have the best education, right? So
fewer than 50% of our children are proficient, but we have the best. That might be gaslighting right there, because you can go to data gateway, right? .utah.gov, and you can see our scores very clearly. But I think that would be perhaps one element of gaslighting right there.
Well, I love what you said just in the very beginning when you said rather than asking questions. The other day, I saw a post from a certain ethical group that was talking, and they said we shouldn't be trusting legislators or parents; they're just meddlers.
Oh.
And I just thought, wow. So when you drop words like meddlers or deplorable into conversations, you are gaslighting. Don't look. Do not look under the hood. Not that I drive, but don't look, because if you do, you might find things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to tell you immediately, let us be your saviors and you don't watch.
Yeah. I think it's deeply unfortunate, friend, the space that our society is in. And some days I just don't even know how to respond. As we look through a liberty lens, last time we were together, we exposed the what of gaslighting. And today I really want to focus on schools and political discourse and real policies and a pattern that we absolutely cannot afford to ignore. Can you give me, or our audience, can you give us just one great example of gaslighting in schools and political discourse?
Well, I think one thing is to say, when a group brings up something, when a group brings up, say, I mean, what I specialize, DEI or SEL, and says it only means X, and don't ask any more questions. I think that that's perfect for educational gaslighting, right?
Yes.
Social and emotional learning, the definition itself is created to be gaslighting. Politically, I think that when people say, well, so we have caucus coming up, and when we have people say things like, oh, go to the people who don't celebrate, who don't share your values, go to their caucus, because it's the only way that we can win, and we need to bring more moderate voices in, et cetera, et cetera. Those things are, what they're really saying is, go ahead and lie about everything that you stand for, because you have the moral high ground. Scary stuff, because I don't see how that's ethical at all.
Well, it's not ethical. You just framed a space where people are willing to lie, they're willing to infiltrate, and they're willing to cheat to get their way, because their belief system can't stand the scrutiny of debate. It always loses the debate. So since they can't win the debate, they have to cheat in the election.
Well, I think it goes even more simple than that. And in terms of, again, gaslighting, which is
Mm-hmm.
hypocrisy,
Yes.
it's colonization.
Mm,
It's
good point.
colonization. It's taking over, and it's saying you're now going to do exactly what we say, and you're not going to have any choice about it. So our colonization is kind of weird because it's people who've already been here. It's
Yeah.
as somebody was saying the other day, kind of the top 1% economically,
Mm,
or the people who have the ideology of maybe globalism.
mm-hmm.
So they are saying you will do this, and at every step, I don't know if you see these dumb things that come through that are like, come and get $100 for being part of this survey in rural Utah, where they want to just evaluate the way that you speak so they can learn to speak to you in a way that you're going to be receptive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's everywhere. I feel like it's like
Most
whack-a-mole.
most surveys are merely data mining. They're data
Yeah.
mining language, they're data mining ideas, they're data mining information. Um, just as an example, in terms of gaslighting, in one of my institutions, oh gosh, it was maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. One of the things that the leaders in the institution did was they did a survey to determine how teachers felt about certain issues. And when that survey came back and it didn't reinforce their ideology, instead of responding to the survey and the real concerns that teachers had, they planned a summer long professional development to indoctrinate teachers into their way of thinking.
Oh, Christina, I've heard people who have said, I used to feel the same way you did. And then I went to a couple of more of these meetings and now I don't
Hmm.
feel that way anymore. And you just sit
Yep.
there going, holy cow, you guys, do you not understand that you're being conditioned into this? Or just this week, Kelly Sky on X talked
Yeah.
about Kessel had a evidence-based study done. And when you find out who did the evidence-based study, it was one of their staff members.
I'm sorry. I just have to laugh. It's like we did this study that says what we're doing is good, and everybody should believe us because we did this study.
Right.
Okay. It's interesting because I shared this week from one of our legislative hearings. There was a slide that I thought was super interesting. Social and emotional learning under the umbrella of Castle has been in Utah for 10 years
Oh,
with
wow.
no uptick in academic gains. I think that that's where we go back to gaslighting because it isn't merely denial, it's systematic narrative substitution. If you watch that hearing, and I'm happy to post a link to it, there was like this denying of observational outcomes, the refraining from transparent data, and then this idea that people were bringing this bill forward. It was HB 399 because they were extremists or they were bought by misinformation, and they wanted to preserve the narrative dominance rather than respond to the data, the empirical data, and be accountable to that. It was political and institutional gaslighting at its best. And it's a pattern of psychological and political gaslighting with very real civic and cultural consequences. Did you know about that, Bill?
I knew about the bill, but more than that, I last time we talked a little bit about the Sovietizing of education.
Hmm. Very much
And
so.
did you know that terms like misinformation, they started in the USSR?
Hmm.
I did not know that. So what I was just reading about was the Soviet practices, and to hear the same
Hmm.
language being used, the exact same language. So
Yeah.
when they say misinformation, um, the when the Soviets came to America, they started a group called the United Front Against Fascism and War.
Oh.
Okay, so they were already using the term fascism. Communists were using the word fascism. So
Hmm.
it's always been accuse people and get people to be afraid of where you stand. So what you've got here, and the people that were the witnesses on that bill, those are actually friends and acquaintances of mine. I see
Yeah.
them a couple of
Hmm.
times a year, right? So I do a similar thing to them. But they're the experts. They're the top. I'm just the mom meddler. I think I might use
I would call you
that.
more than that. You're way more than a meddler. Um,
Yes,
in
but
fact, the women and the men that testified for that bill, they are rock stars, top of the heap
yes,
in their field, and they
yes.
are astounding in their knowledge base, their ability to disseminate that knowledge, and their ability to articulate it in that space. And the fact that they were so mistreated and ignored, it's
Right.
embarrassing for Utah, honestly.
We have a snob problem for sure. We
Mhm.
we have an elitist problem, and the thing is that the elitists
Yeah.
oftentimes, I'm sorry, they don't do the homework.
No.
They get, I'll just be blunt. They get on ChatGPT and say, "Is this true?" And I'm sorry, but Grok, I usually have to ask Grok the same question 3 times to get into the depth of something. Okay, you're
Yeah.
saying this, but how about in this case? Oh, yes, if you're thinking about it in that way, blah blah blah, right? And
Isn't it
that
true?
is, and so when that is your easy way, first off, I think it's extremely irresponsible as a
Hmm.
representative when you have that job of you have that trust of
Hmm.
taking care of our most valuable possession, our children,
Hmm.
and you just let Grok tell you, you know, and and a lot of people will say, well, Grok is more moderate. Yeah, I could argue that one on for you. So
I'm not certain it is,
but
but I would
but
argue it's intellectual laziness.
yeah,
When we have elected officials, and I work with many of them,
yeah,
that that, that are just flat out intellectually lazy because they abandon their own thinking, their own belief system, their own values, and they delegate the adjudication of these bills to AI. They
yeah,
literally say everything you think is good for me.
yeah,
And that's not only first of all, it's overtly irresponsible, but it's a dereliction of your duty.
yeah,
I can't imagine what this next generation is going to look like if our parents go to Grok every time they have a problem with their kid.
yeah. And the thing is that we don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that there are definitely pluses to using AI at this point. Now, I think that we probably would have been better off if we never had it. But
Yeah.
at the
Hmm.
point that we have it now, there are very positive reasons to use it.
Yeah.
But when people like experts, professors,
Hmm.
doctors come and present to you, and you just write them off because your friends and neighbors elected you, I have a massive problem with that. Also, I have a massive problem with ignoring the parents who care deeply about their children. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that annoys me and the whole gaslighting thing is that these are just the crazy parents. Well, we weren't the crazy parents when we were the PTA moms. We weren't the
Yeah.
crazy parents when we were doing the fundraising for your schools. We weren't the crazy parents when we were the person who was asked to be the representative for this and that and the other, right? We were
Yeah.
appreciated until we started to ask questions, which is
Hmm.
something I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but I know that the very first thing that woke me up, that made me go, something's not right, is when I got a paper that said you are not supposed to ask questions. Asking questions is whiteness. Again, with this, so oh yeah. So I was like, well, then I guess I'll I'll do it for everybody. And so I went
Yeah.
and asked the questions. But
Can I gaslight you?
yeah,
May I gaslight you?
yeah.
Picture or it didn't happen.
Oh yeah. Oh for sure.
I love it when people say that. And I'm like, aren't you the people of lived experience?
Right.
Aren't you the
Yep.
people of you can't deny my assertions because I lived it, therefore you can't deny it? Like
Aren't you
it.
the people who pushed a bill that we can't have cell phones so that we can't record what's going on?
Hmm. Yep.
I
And
mean,
you put cell jammers in schools so teachers can't even use their own phones.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's deeply unfortunate. But not only do I believe you that that happens, I have been in those trainings,
Yeah.
and some of them, not joking, they make you sign NDAs as you walk in the door. When you sign your name to say, "Hey, I've attended this training so I can get professional development credit or get paid to be here." One of the things it says at the top is that by participating in the training, you agree not to disclose. Hmm.
We have a we have a list. We have an ongoing list of the teacher trainings that are going on in our district.
Hmm.
And most of them have to do with social justice. Maybe not in
Yeah.
a way that people would necessarily recognize, like
Hmm.
honoring the names of indigenous people.
Hmm.
Because it's, again, it's that slow boil, it's that frog in the pot, right? And
Yeah.
so, which in itself is gaslighting,
Yeah.
you know. So, but
Yep.
one of the ones specifically, because I'm just looking at your notes, and it talks about the math declines.
Hmm.
Well, when math becomes, instead of the basics of math, it becomes how to make math relevant to the inner city child. or to the LGBTQ child, what they're really doing is they're taking every opportunity to strip down truth.
Yes.
That's really, and I just wish that I wish more people were in love with the truth and that they would just say the fact. You don't have to say the fact. Somehow I could say that and be extremely direct in what I'm saying and not insult people in the process. Now that doesn't mean people won't get triggered, but that's on them.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything insulting in saying, yeah, our math scores would probably be more improved if our kids were getting direct math instruction
Hmm.
and not instead being taught to use generative conversations in math.
Yeah. Well, and maybe our children would do better in math if we actually taught them math instead of trying to convince them that math is actually about reading. It's not. I mean, there's value in word problems, don't get me wrong. That's what we do as adults all the time. But the reality is automaticity in math cannot be replaced with words. It just can't. So I think you make a really good point when you talk about how people respond, because I know you and I both know about the you can't be offensive and you can't offend. It's like this new age thing. You can't even ask people where they're from because you've got a deeply rooted message that they don't belong. Nope, I just would like to know where you lived before you moved here. There's nothing wrong with that, but offense is a feeling. And so when we outlaw offense, we're actually outlawing how other people feel. And you can't tell me not to offend. You have to tell the other person not to feel. And
Yeah.
they are responsible for their feelings, not me. And that's another measure of that institutional gaslighting, not just between administrators and staff or administrators and educators, but between the institution itself and who governs that institution and parents.
Right. Well, and if you start guiding how people feel and you start telling kids that there's only one proper way to feel, because some
Mm-hmm.
kids, something's going to roll right off their shoulder, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
does that mean they're not fully developed in their soft skills because they didn't have the right, let me break down and have need to go into the room with the stuffed animals and cuddle one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
so, and that is what tends to happen when you start dictating the proper way to feel, the proper emotions to have. That goes
Yep.
back to social and emotional learning. I find it interesting that you said, trying to think, you said new age,
Mm-hmm.
because I found out recently that Castle started from the Center for New Age and Religion, I believe.
Oh,
You
yeah.
might want to look that up and put it up on the page, but I believe that's what it's called. I probably have notes on it, what it's called.
You know what? I
Sorry,
think
it'll take me a second.
that whole line from the Tim Shriver genealogy
Yeah.
is astounding. And if people knew more about it, I think they would run to burn SEL
So the
because its roots are so deeply rooted in New Age religion.
So specifically, the page is called spiritualityandeducation.org,
Mm,
and it talks about how what Castle's goals are, and that it is about changing how people view religion in
yeah.
school. This should be illegal, but
Well,
instead we're told that's a conspiracy, and it's like it's on their webpage. You can go to it right now. I did
yeah,
earlier. I did last week, right? And so
exactly.
that's the problem, and I think that that's what makes people frustrated. And then what happens when people get frustrated is that then they begin to have this like seed of resentment, and then they can't let it go, and then they become what they're accused of being. Oh, well, you sound crazy.
Mm,
Oh, well, yeah, because you can only take so much
mm-hmm.
before, unless you are so trained in it. And like I said, I know the people who are so trained in it. You can sit in a room and have people say everything about you, and you just look at them and you go, okay, are you done yet? For
Yep.
me, I see toddlers. I just kind of want to put a little pacifier in their mouth and go, "Are you done?"
Uh,
But
I'm not quite there yet. Usually I'm like, wah, 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 wah. I
yeah,
have to just roll my eyes. My favorite is that if you were ever a teacher and I'm all wah, 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 because they're
yeah,
so devoid of common sense, devoid of any idea of reality.
yeah,
And for listeners that don't know, I work in schools every day. I interface with 600 students a week. I have hundreds of colleagues. This is a thing. So when people say that if I were only a teacher, wah, 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 because it just doesn't affect me anymore. But
well,
I think you hit the nail on the head when you started talking about there's a problem, and instead of acknowledging the problem, our institutions started to reframe the problem, or they started to flip that finger around and point it at you or the
Yeah.
person identifying the problem. And that ultimately, let's say the word again, Cari, it's gaslighting.
Right. And it is that abusive in that same way that a person who is trauma impacted, I'm using, education speak, but a person
Hmm.
with trauma impacted tends to fight back. And so
Yeah.
if there's parents listening, I want you to understand that when you go to the school board and you quote unquote fight back, when you get online and you write something nasty or whatever, they just pick that up as proof that you're the problem, which is why you have to put everything through a lens of how gracious, how generous can I be in my response, even if
Mm.
you inside are screaming, because you are a tactic that's being used. Gaslighting is
Yep.
flat out abusive. That's how come I think it's 1984 that says 2 plus 2 equals 4. Just make sure that you continuously say 2 plus 2 equals 4, because they try to make you say 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Hmm.
But when you know something's true and people are regularly telling you that it's not, can I give you another? You said that you taught there. Well, I teach in the homeschool world, but
Hmm.
it's not. I don't just teach my child or children. I have 87 kids, and
Wow.
our math program is by far superior because we can bring a specialist in who teaches classical math. And so our
Good for
kids
you.
are going. So the thing is that the same thing happens with reading. You take a
Hmm.
crappy SEL induced reading program, or you take classical books and you have better thinkers, naturally more calmer temperaments, all of these
Hmm.
things, and larger imaginations. All of that is just a fact that we've always known, that somehow we were told, want to talk about gaslighting, that this is the new normal and you must accept it.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, kids are suffering. And so many people are pulling back, churches, families, everybody's pulling back and saying, let's do something different about school, because whatever that new stuff is. And I thought this was crazy. The same people who said parents and legislators are meddlers also said, just give us 4 years to do our work.
Yeah, they know how to gaslight, don't they?
It was just like, no, there's no 4 years to do your work. You know who else has said, give us 4 years? Dictators.
Yep. Mal.
Specifically Mao, Lenin,
Yeah.
specifically. Just give us 4 years. Give us 4 years,
Hmm.
basically, and your kids will not be recognizable. So I think
Yeah.
it's hilarious that their little Instagram graphics are the same
Yeah.
thing that was said back then.
I know that it's in every state and it's across the globe, but to me, I have never seen more prolific and more pervasive gaslighting than I've seen in Utah.
Yeah. That
I'm
comes
consistently shocked.
that
No
comes
longer
down
surprised, but shocked.
well, that comes down to religion. It comes down to a religion
Hmm.
that is taught that and I'm not saying that this is the correct way. I'm talking about the people who've adopted this for their own aims. Okay.
Hmm.
If you believe that you are chosen to be in a position, that you are called, that you have a higher whatever, and other people are taught, well, you're lesser. Maybe you have less economically or whatever, just because you weren't as valiant. It comes down to that, and then it makes people go, I shouldn't question. I shouldn't be, uh,
Wow.
you know, um, I shouldn't be a problem. And then the other part of the religion is that it is always see the good, always look for the good, which is a
Mm.
beautiful thing, except
Yeah.
for when it's not, and when people come in who will weaponize that.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that as I've been involved in Utah politics, I hear more and more and more. They're just good people, but they're misinformed. And I'm like, clearly, y'all don't understand the doctrine of total depravity. Not the case right here, but I could put a link to a great video on the doctrine of total depravity. I actually shared it with one of my political cohorts, and they were completely dumbfounded. They were like, "Oh, this is in scripture, and there's multiple scripture references." And I'm like, "Yeah, the Bible clearly teaches that people are not inherently good. It's overt. It's right there. It's in your face. And we are only saved by grace through faith, right? And our lives would be all screwed up if not for the grace of God. And
Yeah.
I wish that we had more of an adherence to that truth. If we're going to play the faith card, I wish we would have an adherence to that truth.
That's the key if we're going to play the faith card, because a lot of
Hmm.
places don't take on the faith card. And so I
Mm.
don't expect them to. If education says we're going to separate these two things, that's one thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
But if education or government says, oh no, we're going to do this,
Hmm.
we're going to read the Bible, we're going to use scripture to push the laws that we want, but
Hmm.
we're not going to use it equally in places to question maybe if we're getting this wrong.
Yeah.
Again, the gaslighting, the bill about funding for illegal immigrants.
Hmm.
Oh, Jesus would want you to.
I remember one of our legislators, in fact, I know who it was. It was Cheryl Acton, said that it was a quote violation of the Sermon on the Mount. And I thought to myself, do you read? Because the Sermon on the Mount is the Beatitudes, which are the characteristics of a Christian, of one who has been saved. It's defining the characteristics of a Christian. And then it goes on to talk about other things, but most famous for um, consider the lilies and how they grow. And I'm thinking, I don't know how it can be a violation of characteristics. And those characteristics, none of them are about coerced generosity. Not one.
Right.
But by
They
all
have
means, let's put it out there for people who don't understand scripture and don't understand the Beatitudes. But if you're going to use it, at least understand it and use it correctly.
right. Yeah. I don't have more. I don't have more to say on that. That isn't. I mean, like, because if we're talking about education, then I don't know how much we should lean into that.
Oh,
But I mean,
true.
I got the widow's mite, right? And
Hmm.
so somebody was like, the widow gave up her last piece, and I was just like, I I don't see it that way. So the widow gave up her last piece to further Christ's work. That's what she gave up her last coin for.
Hmm. And she gave it
Um,
to the Lord. She didn't give it to the neighbor, and she didn't give it to the person who entered illegally.
yeah. So and that's why my head was like trying to get around this, and I was just like, um, no, because in terms of temporal, they would have been providing for her. So she gave it
Yeah.
up to give it to the Lord. She gave it up to further his
Hmm.
work.
Yep.
And I don't believe that his work would have been to bring people in who would adopt socialism or worse.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at there. But neither
Yeah.
one, because socialism is just the pretty word for communism, and
Yeah.
communists hate God. Period.
Yes.
There's no arguing with that. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they did that you're not supposed to give up your last penny to further the work of those who hate you. But
Yeah. We should give our last penny to the ones who hate us and want to destroy our country, which is probably not true about every single person who enters our country
no,
illegally.
for sure it's
But
not.
I do think there's truth, so much truth in Representative Lee's response to that when he said, "I'm happy to send these people to your door, and you can help them if that's what you choose to do with your money." And I thought, well, that was an excellent response because generosity is great, but coerced generosity isn't generosity at all. It's just theft.
Right. And 100% that is the whole point. It is theft. People have said they are here to destroy and to colonize.
Yeah.
Like that is why there's no question about things like fraud. But and to bring it all back to this, it comes down to you aren't supposed to question.
Yeah.
And so if we're being taught this as parents, what are the kids being taught about questioning and thinking for themselves? I mean,
Well, I think they're taught not to question, honestly. When a student asks too many questions in school, usually it's a negative report on the report card
yeah,
that they're disruptive during quiet time or that um, they need to find a better time to engage in query, that they need to go with the explicit instruction, not question it, and move through it. Yeah, I don't think our children are taught to question. That would be my assertion. But, I try not to speak with a broad brush. There might be a few classrooms. I know one is mine. I really encourage kids to ask questions in my classroom. One, because sometimes I misspeak. It's not often, but there are times that I say something and I'll flip two words around and a student will ask me a question and I'll be like, did I really say that? And everybody shakes their head. I'm like, oh, that's not truthful at all. Let's try this again, you know? And so let's try this again so that I don't invert those two words. Let's invert them and
Yeah.
take them around. Or, for example, counting to three instead of four when you're getting ready to start a tune. Those things are important. And if kids don't ask questions, then their education is A, not as good, B, not as fulfilling, and C, not as deep. And I don't even really believe in the terminology deep learning. I think it's some hokum word that we made up to try to paint bad standards as something of quality. How do you measure deep learning? It's just absurd, which again is gaslighting because it's a word used to make you think something is of quality when it's not.
Right.
And
When
so
they
it's
when they
it's
say
unfortunate.
when they say deep learning, they generally mean picking up those competencies, picking up that new agey,
Hmm.
accepting your trials, or what I would call your struggle session. That's what it means to learn deeply, to
Oh,
sit and to have people throw a bunch of things at you that you know aren't true, to struggle with that, and to come out going, okay, sure, I accept it,
yeah. Just
which is
grapple.
scary.
Don't talk, just grapple. I've been in those struggle sessions in teacher trainings. Don't talk. And they always use the keep sweet voice. Don't talk. Just grapple. Just grapple with this. You just need to grapple. Think about it. You just need to think about it. Just grapple, grapple.
Well, I'll tell you the other side of it, and you can decide or not if you want to. But
Hmm.
on last Monday, I was in a call with multiple therapists, 35 therapists across the
Hmm.
US, the UK, and South Africa.
Wow.
And they wanted to understand social and emotional learning. And they all sat with their jaws dropped. These are, they're at least my age, if not a little older. And
Hmm.
they were like, how in the world did this happen? And they had never heard the term struggle session, um, except Yako had, but the other ones had never heard the term struggle session. So it's real. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there are flat out people who kill themselves over these things, but
Yeah.
we're doing it to our kids. And I honestly think that the reason they do it to the kids is they think that it's kind. They think, well, hey, we're going to colonize. That's
Hmm.
it. You're being colonized, and at
Hmm.
least we're not putting your kids in trucks and sending them off to re-education.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing it in a much softer way. So you should thank us.
Yeah. You should thank us for being nice as we colonize your nation.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. All right. Let's come back here.
Okay.
So as we kind of come out of our talk of struggle sessions, let's talk about literacy because literacy isn't neutral. How we read political language, policy briefs, and institutional narratives determines our civic competence. And the when literacy instruction declines, citizens lose the ability to evaluate competing claims, hold institutions accountable, distinguish narrative from evidence. And so reading is just not academic, it's civic infrastructure. And I want to talk to you about this because you brought up classical reading, the teaching of phonics, the teaching of classical literature, and how it informs not just our understanding of the world, but also our ability to debate and evaluate competing narratives. Could you dive into that for me?
If reading becomes just gutting it out and just getting across what a lot of people call the message, then kids
Hmm.
are not able to look through the windows and see other people's experience. They're not able to weigh. They're not even able to have conversations about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys,
Hmm.
because it's all told for them. So, like, take, I don't know if you've ever read it, but take Harry Potter. Okay,
Hmm.
you do not know. Sorry if I'm ruining it for you, but it's been a long time. Um, you don't know that Snape is actually a good guy, right? You have to like get to know him. And so imagine with any kind of book, you have to get to know the character.
Hmm.
Um, I think Huck Finn is another really good example.
Hmm.
If he's just presented through a lens of white supremacy,
Ah,
and
yeah.
you're constantly asking those kind of questions, you've already made a judgment before you've gotten to know the character. And so I
Mm.
think that classical books, and also just good stories in general, the problem is a lot of good stories, a lot of current writers have been told that if you don't include this agenda, we are not going to publish you.
Yes,
So
that's true.
that's why classic books are such an important thing. Now, when it comes into, so those little things that you learn without even knowing that you're learning them as a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, just how to compare and how to see a person who, what is another book? A Tale of Two Cities,
Mm.
and starting to realize how that the Frenchman's wife, who's so unforgiving, how she got there. Okay,
Mm.
that teaches you empathy to figure out how in the world this woman got there. Or the Mad Men of Piney Woods is another one. How did the Irish
Mm.
grandma get to be such an absolute bigot? Because she was. But how did she get there? Oh, because she came over in the potato famine and she wasn't treated very well. Okay, so those little ideas help you become a more truly empathetic person, not a global goals, global sustainable goals empathy, but an actual empathetic person who
Yeah.
actually can look at different people and see those things. Now, take that into learning about policy, or even sitting in a room in caucus and being able
Mm-hmm.
to not go, I hate that person, I hate that person, I hate that person. Because we haven't normalized hate. We've normalized humanity when we have good life saving, and I will use that term because for me it was. You know, you know my story. I grew up and aged out of the foster system.
Mm-hmm.
What made me a person who can speak with people across the world and have something valid to say? Books.
Mm.
Books. Literally, if somebody would have given me the new version of Little Women or the new version of The Secret Garden, where she's queer and built her own business and whatever else, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to this miserable young woman who finds beauty in small things and then
Mm.
ends up helping other people.
Yeah.
One way is proven, another way is paid for. And I
Good
feel
point.
like that's the same thing with, I mean, and maybe that's not where you wanted to go with policy, but that's how I feel when I go to these meetings and I'm sitting there listening to people who I'm sure they mean well. But I also am sure that, as we've talked about before, they haven't taken things to their natural conclusion. They think
No.
socialism means kumbaya.
Well, and I would disagree with you. Having interfaced with many of them, I'm not sure they mean well. I don't have that assurance because
I'm not saying they all do. There are definitely people who don't. But I think there are some people who are going to go because an infographic says, yes, you need to be heard too. And those people probably mean well. They probably think of socialism as kumbaya, and they don't understand what the Bolsheviks did to the Christians. They don't have that
oh,
depth.
well, I would argue that most of them don't know who the Bolsheviks are.
Right.
I've said that word out loud on the public record only to be made fun of like it's a vocabulary word. I'm like it's a noun. Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember one time saying Maoist, and people were like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah. Somebody told me, are you talking about a cat?
Oh,
Meowist.
yeah. So we've got a real historic illiteracy in our nation. We're doing another series on the podcast about how to vet your candidates. If you have not seen that, go and watch it because it gives you the questions to ask. Even if you don't know all these things, the people representing you should. And they should be able to respond to basic and advanced questions on these issues. And I think it's super important. I think that when we start to emphasize process over knowledge, which you see in our political institutions all the time, you're going to be gaslit. When you start to deprioritize foundational things like classical literature, you're going to be gaslit. And when you start to introduce ideological training without critical analysis or without accepting criticism, you're going to be gaslit. And you'll see school districts defend these frameworks through language that deflects from measurable outcomes. And we gave that example right at the beginning of this podcast, wherein SEL has been in Utah for 10 years and our scores are actually lower than they were when we began. There's no measurable improvement, zero. But yet we want to deflect from that. And that's where gaslighting operates. When we do this, there's real families, real students, and real consequences. Let's talk a little bit about legacy and gaslighting. Zoom out a little bit for the next generation, Cari.
Yeah.
What does
Okay.
this mean for our children and our children's children?
All right. So we don't have this academic advancement that we would hope to see with spending all of the money for a program like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What you do have is a higher level of Democrats than ever before.
Oh,
And that is one of the things
true.
that we built. Now, another thing that is on my heart and in my mind right now is you have a bunch of kids who know they're being gaslit.
Yes.
You have a bunch of kids who are just like, this is baloney. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know of girls who believe they're lesbian who don't want to take SEL because they feel like it's brainwashing them. Okay, so okay, so the thing is that the gaslighting has been going on for so long that it's very likely, and I hate to be the black pill here, but it's very likely that in this upcoming midterms, those kids will no longer ever have a voice in Utah because
Mm.
there are people who are here. Their whole goal, the whole reason they put all of this stuff in, was to turn Utah into a progressive state.
Yeah.
That was the whole purpose, and their mission is, potentially accomplished. I hope not, because
Yeah.
there's a group right behind them. I have a son who can't vote on caucus because his birthday's next Tuesday. So he can't do anything this Tuesday, right? So
Oh.
they're right behind them. So, but I do think that in terms of their legacy, now here's the thing: when we were kids, I don't know if you ever saw the bumper sticker, but said, if you aren't a Democrat or a liberal in your youth, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by your 30s, you have no brain. That used to be on stickers. Okay, you'll see so many people. There's an organization called Walk Away. So many people who are like,
Mm-hmm.
one day I woke up. Our kids aren't going to have the chance to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. They will
Yeah.
not have the chance to wake up. So we fight and we fight and we fight. And we also have to prepare. One of the big issues of what you were saying was the big illiteracy problem is that when you mix the illiteracy with the arrogance, so
Yeah.
there's no humility. There's no, oh, maybe I don't have that right. Show
Yeah.
me. Show me. I'm
Or maybe
totally
I don't
willing.
have more to learn.
Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to a candidate yesterday and asked a question. And I really appreciate the way the candidate responded. Hey, thank you for reaching out. This is my thoughts on that issue. And I was like, thank you for the humility. The humility itself gives me a little check in the box if I'm a delegate again. Right. So because
Yeah.
I appreciate that. We're stripping that away by teaching the kids there's only one way to be, and that's only allegiant to one thing, and that one thing is the state. That's the gaslighting. The
Yeah.
idea that we don't have liberty, that we live under authoritarian, that we don't have
Mm.
freedom. We're moving towards all of that in a
Yeah.
way that there's no undoing, and I think that is the issue. We're robbing them of their legacy, Christina.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
But
seeing.
I think we're robbing them of their legacy, but also their liberty, because
Yes.
allegiance to the state is merely communism, and when you make the
Yes.
government into a god, freedom no longer exists. Uh,
Yeah.
I think when we're seeing our institutions normalize narrative over evidence, and then we see our children internalize very dangerous habits, and one of those is the government will always save me.
Right.
Another one is when they doubt their own reality. I saw this circle. The circle was pink. I saw it, right? Or when there's a deference to authority over inquiry, when they don't fully understand the difference between opinion and fact. And there are many facts, Shapiro made it famous, facts don't care about your feelings. There are many facts that people will try to frame as opinions
Right.
just to manipulate and gaslight people into thinking it's not factual or truthful. The fact is, you and I are speaking on the internet right now,
Right.
but somebody could say, "Did you really see that?" Or my favorite, "Picture or it didn't happen, dude." Well, what if we post this podcast and then we delete it and somebody didn't happen to take a photo? It actually still happened.
Happened.
We
Yeah.
still said the things we said. And and when our children are in that space, it's not intellectual maturity, it's
No.
confusing.
It's infantilizing them.
Yes.
Truthfully, like you're taking these people and saying you need dependence.
Yes.
A lot of times the people who push for these agendas, another thing talking about the political space, when politicians say things like, oh, that's just a conspiracy or whatever else, right? They're being political themselves. It's sort of like if you go into church and somebody in church is saying, we're going to do this thing on this subject that I think is so super important, and you have a counter view, and they say, oh, but we're not going to bring politics in. But you already did. Like you presented it, you started off that way,
Yeah.
and now you're bringing that in. It's, I mean, the only thing is that it really is abusive, and I think that people need to realize, first off, you've got to be involved.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm stressed out because I teach a lot of young people. I know where their hearts are.
Hmm.
I mean, we are where Charlie died. We know we have a
Yes.
lot of people, you know, and they need the ability to be able to process and to think, not to have that stolen from them, quite frankly, by a bunch of people who happen to own NGOs and make a
Oh.
profit off of
Hmm.
our empathy.
Yep.
Um, so so when people dismiss you and say, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy," that right there should be a check into the other box. If you can't explain to me what the Bolsheviks are, um, or were, or if you can't, the 1930 strategy, like if you don't understand
Hmm.
these very pressing things that are current right now, no,
Yeah.
nobody should be able to vote for you because they wink, smile, and say, "Hey, folks, how's it going?" Like that. I mean, I don't mean to change that. You should not vote for anyone who says, "Hey, folks, how's it going, y'all?" Like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he has a balding head. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I think I think you make such good points that we have to have people who have clarity of truth. And when there's like this moral relativism in their own brain, it doesn't
Yes.
mean that other people can't disagree with them, but when there's a moral relativism within their own assertions, that's how they're going to govern.
Yeah.
Their votes are going to be all over the map because they are not convicted at their core. And a house built on sand is not going to stand.
Yeah.
And it's a biblical reference, but it's a good one. I think that as we talk about legacy, families need to raise children to love truth.
Right.
Because when children experience, like what we just talked about, if you don't have conviction, children experience this kind of moral dissonance, and that fractures trust. And I think, I don't know, there has to be some sort of shared reality in our space, and that means by not, we don't deny reality. We just look at it and we debate it, because without that shared reality, debate collapses, and what is left is narrative dominance, and narrative dominance is nothing more than propaganda.
Yeah. Once again, Christina, you always bring the academic voice into things, and so I'm trying to simplify it for us plain folks. So
Sorry.
you don't always have to debate truth. There are people, and it's very sad that we're in a place where there are people who are not open to debate, and all they want to
Yeah.
do is have outrage. And
Yeah.
that is not. I want to be so clear about that. That's not just on the left.
Oh,
the
it's
The
on the right
right
too.
can have just as much, like, first thing is outrage. You have to have clarity for yourself, and you have to have clarity for your family. And
Hmm.
what I like to say is, this has nothing to do with President Trump being in the White House, because
Hmm.
he will be gone, regardless of what people think. He will be gone in when his term is up.
Yeah.
Okay. And when he's out, there still needs to be policies that protect families, and
Hmm.
specifically for me, that protect faith. There has to be that.
Hmm.
And the only way that's going to be is if we are a moral and informed populace. They
Yeah.
do not want you to be, those who gaslight don't want you to be informed. They want you to
No.
believe in a lie. Now, here's another thing. When you go to Salt Lake, and you when you when you go to Salt Lake, there's this big sign mural thingy downtown in front of the Salt Palace, and it's got like all of these arrows: up is down and down. I'm sure you've seen this before. Anyways, the whole point of this being, to me, that sign is moral relativism.
Mm.
This is a state where the progressives there's a massive tear between people who believe in truth and people who believe that truth is backwoods, hillbilly, old fashioned. The new group doesn't believe in that. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that group is who is rapidly gaining power.
Yeah. Which is why we're all over the place. We feel like one of those parachute balloons that kids play with in gym. That's how life is here in Utah right now. It's just it's all over the
Yeah.
place. It's like
Yeah.
you're a ball on one of those things. I think that we have to be committed to this idea that truth is objective and dignity is inerrant and moral agency matters. And when we're gaslit by our governance and our elected officials and our schools, it undermines all three. And by that I mean, like, the mobilization of your tax obligation is not a tax cut. Can we say that when
Right.
people say we gave you a $1.17 billion tax cut? I totally made up that number, by the way. Um, and really, what they did was they cut it in bucket three, but they added it to buckets 1, 2, 7, 9, and 11. And the total tax increase is more than the tax cut. That's political gaslighting. And it shouldn't happen. It is completely inappropriate, but we see that happen every single election cycle in Utah. And if you call it out, oh, the horror.
When you live in a time when you are hated for telling the truth, then you're in very dark times.
Mm-hmm.
There's that saying, weak men create hard times. I believe that we are in a time of not only the weakest of men, but neutered men and
Yeah.
radical feminist women. That's what we're facing, and both of them, one of them doesn't even really believe, the men don't really believe that they deserve the power that they have, so they become simps to the radical feminist hell breathing woman who who I mean, from the very beginning has despised everything.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like that's what it's like you just are like, out of the way, just avoid that as much as you possibly can, because it's not a good time. but
Yeah.
um but but ultimately, it always comes down to truth. I'm not going to I'm not going to lay down and be a doormat
Mm-hmm.
at the expense of truth. Like, I don't
Yeah.
like confrontation. I don't want to be a jerk, but I'm gonna stand up for truth.
Yeah. Well, and I've never feared confrontation, but I certainly don't relish in it. I don't go, oh, baby, baby, let's go and be confrontational today. But it's never been something that scared me. And the Utah culture is so scared of just
Conflict.
having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just having a conversation. Like, for example, hey, Cari, I noticed you said this. I would like to understand more about it. You
Right.
can't say stuff like that in Utah. Otherwise, people recoil like a porcupine, getting ready to take all their quills and throw them out because you just asked a question. And that, I think, comes back to bringing it home. When questions are made to be some sort of crime, you're going to be gaslit.
Right.
And so, as we come into the end, we just hit an hour, friend. So, as we come into the end, we need to demand raw data, not filtered summaries, insist on year over year comparisons, scrutinize benchmark changes, document discrepancies between messaging and data, evaluate transparency as a governance priority, and clarity is ultimately the antidote to narrative manipulation. Do you have any practical guidance?
Yeah. Stay calm and stay clear and stay committed to truth. Um, what I always try to do, I mean, this is literally my job, is to build coalitions with
Hmm.
like-minded parents and also teachers. We
Yeah.
need to, like, that's another thing that has happened, is that teachers have been told parents are just solidly against them, and vice versa. The ones who
Hmm.
are screaming this are usually the activist teachers.
Yes.
So for those of you teachers who aren't in that crowd, please note that you have an ally with us.
Hmm.
um and of course, encourage critical thinking. Like,
Yeah.
always never shut your kids down for asking a question, and praise them if they ask questions. If somebody asks, I'll just give you this example. I may have done this before, but my son's classroom showed a video of Al Jazeera, and
Mm-hmm.
he raised his hand because it was the Trump's very fine people comment, and he raised his hand and he said, "So there's more to this video." And the teacher said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that today. You're going to be respectful." And I absolutely was his ally in that situation. Like if my kid is, being a little jerk, whatever, then I'm going to call that out. But if he's just standing up for truth, you can bet I'm going to make him feel like a hero and make him feel like that's the normal thing. And the person who told him he couldn't was the villain in that situation.
Absolutely. Because truth travels farther when trust exists. Part of the reason we have such great conversations and challenge each other all the time is because we trust each other.
Right.
And it's so important, not just between, husband and wife, friend and friend, but in those that we sit across from.
In society,
It's so,
Christina.
Yeah.
In society, there have been people who've said we need to prepare for an angrier world. I say, says who? No, we don't. We can reverse that. We don't have to. The truth is they only have power because we've given it to them. You've seen that one again. I probably put this picture in of all the people underneath the guy's foot, and everybody realizes that if they just stand up, it would be over. And I think that's it. It's just there is a reason that Christianity, and I was telling you a little bit about what happened in the USSR. The same thing's happening in Nigeria. There's a reason why Christianity is always targeted, because Christianity is truth and it's hope. And those are two things that you cannot have in an authoritarian society.
Yeah. Well, authoritarianism is fundamentally incompatible with Christianity because Christianity believes in agency.
Yeah.
And it believes in God's truth, not man's truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's true. Well, I'm going to close us up here in reminding our viewers that gaslighting is not merely denial. It is narrative domination. And it is what happens when institutions begin to believe their own messaging matters more than observable reality. And history teaches us that when truth becomes negotiable, liberty becomes fragile. But the answer isn't ever anger, nor cynicism. It's clarity and courage. And it's a renewed commitment to truth in our homes, in our schools, and in our public life. Liberty requires truth, and literacy requires honesty, and legacy requires courage. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Cari, for joining us. And we will see you next time on Liberty, Literacy, and Legacy. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ion Peptide, and you can earn 15% off with the code CB4ED. Today's episode is brought to you by Ion Peptide, and you can earn 15% off with the code CB4ED.